The first thing the man said to me was, "She left with the boss." The second thing made my stomach drop. He leaned back in his chair, looked me straight in the eyes, and gave me a strange little smile. Probably another test drive. Then he laughed. I didn't, because I was standing there holding 2 tickets to my wife's favorite singer, planning to surprise her after work. And suddenly, I was wondering if I was the only person in that building who didn't know what my wife had been doing behind my back. My wife, Valeria, had worked for nearly 8 years as a senior sales manager at a large luxury car dealership in Royal Oak. She was good at her job, confident, charming, the kind of woman customers trusted immediately. Her boss was Ricardo Morales, the dealership's general manager. I had met him several times. He was successful, respected, married, and always seemed professional. At least that was what I thought. That afternoon, I walked into the dealership carrying the concert tickets. Valeria wasn't at her desk. Instead, one of her coworkers, Diego Navarro, was sitting nearby. "Where's Valeria?" I asked. Diego looked at me, then he looked at the tickets in my hand. "She left with Ricardo." He paused. Then came that smirk. "You know, another test drive." Something changed inside me. I forced a smile. "Right." Diego immediately turned toward his computer, but he couldn't hide the expression on his face. I walked outside. Valeria's car was still parked beneath the same tree where she always left it. I stood there staring at it, trying to convince myself that Diego was just being an idiot. Then a black Mercedes pulled into the lot. Ricardo stepped out, and Valeria stepped out beside him. They were talking quietly. Ricardo leaned toward her and whispered something. Valeria laughed. Then she suddenly noticed me. Her smile disappeared. Ricardo froze. For one long second, nobody moved. Then Ricardo turned and walked quickly back inside. Valeria came toward me. "What are you doing here?" I held up the tickets. "I wanted to surprise you." Her face softened. For a moment, she looked genuinely happy. "Oh my God. You got tickets?" She hugged me. But something about that hug felt different. Her body was tense. Her hands were cold. And when I asked what she and Ricardo had been discussing, she answered too quickly. "Work." Just one word. Work. That night, she barely spoke about the concert, and I couldn't stop thinking about Diego's smile. 2 days later, Valeria told me she had an important client meeting after work. "I'll probably be late," she said. I nodded. I didn't ask questions. But that evening, while driving through downtown Royal Oak, I saw her car. It was parked outside a quiet residential building. Not an office, not a restaurant, a residential loft. I pulled over. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I told myself there was an explanation. There had to be. Then the building's front door opened. Valeria walked out, and beside her was Ricardo. They stopped on the sidewalk. Ricardo touched her arm. Valeria looked around nervously. Then they got into her car and drove away together. I sat there in silence. My mind was screaming one thing: she's cheating. But another part of me refused to believe it. So the next morning, I went back to the dealership. I found Diego. This time, I didn't smile. "What do you know about my wife?" He stared at me for several seconds. Then he sighed. "You really don't know?" "Know what?" Diego lowered his voice. "Everyone here thinks Valeria and Ricardo have been seeing each other." My chest tightened. "How long?" "Months." "And the test drives?" He looked uncomfortable. "They disappear together sometimes. Ricardo calls it a test drive. Nobody believes that anymore." I walked away without another word, but one question kept bothering me. Why had Valeria been so calm? Why hadn't she confessed? And why did it feel like Ricardo was afraid of something much bigger than an affair? That afternoon, I called an old friend, Mateo Castillo. Mateo owned several dealerships in the area. And more importantly, Ricardo worked for him. I told Mateo what I had seen. His expression changed immediately. He knew the residential loft. "It belongs to my company," he said quietly. "We use it for visiting executives and private business meetings." Then he looked at me. "Are you sure about Ricardo?" I told him what Diego had said. Mateo became silent. "I'll investigate," he promised. But something about his voice bothered me. He wasn't shocked. He sounded scared. The next morning, I confronted Ricardo. He was sitting behind his desk when I walked in. "I know about you and Valeria." His face went pale. "Miguel, you're misunderstanding. Don't lie to me." He looked toward the door. Then he reached for his phone. "I need to show you something." He opened a video. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. It was filmed inside a restaurant. Valeria was sitting at a table. A man sat beside her. Then he put his arm around her. She leaned against him and smiled. I stared at the screen. Then the man turned toward the camera. My heart stopped. It wasn't Ricardo. It was Mateo Castillo, my oldest friend, the man I had trusted for almost 20 years. I couldn't breathe. Ricardo looked at me. "I'm sorry." I replayed the video. Then another one. Then another. There were messages too. Photos. Hotel reservations. Private dinners. 2 years. 2 years of lies. And suddenly, Diego's words made sense. The test drives weren't about Ricardo and Valeria. Ricardo had been covering for them. Mateo had ordered him to keep quiet because he didn't want the scandal reaching the dealership. I left Ricardo's office feeling like the entire world had shifted beneath my feet. But I wasn't finished. That Saturday, I called Mateo. He answered like nothing had happened. "Miguel, I was going to call you Monday." "Don't." Silence. "I know everything." Another silence. Then he whispered, "Where did you hear that?" That question told me everything. On Monday morning, I walked into Mateo's dealership. He was sitting in Ricardo's office. Several employees were there. Mateo looked surprised to see me. I placed my phone on the desk. "Play it." The room became silent as the video began. Mateo watched himself with his arm around my wife. His face collapsed. Nobody said a word. Finally, I looked at him. "You weren't just my friend." He couldn't meet my eyes. "You were the person I trusted most." Later that evening, I confronted Valeria. She didn't deny it. She cried. She said it started with conversations, then dinners, then one mistake, then another. And eventually 2 years disappeared behind lies. I asked her one question. Was I the last person to know? She looked down. And after a long silence, she whispered, "Yes." That answer hurt more than the affair itself, because it meant everyone else had known, the coworker, the boss, my friend, and maybe half the dealership. Everyone except me. A few days later, I filed for divorce. I lost my wife. I lost my best friend. But the hardest thing to accept was this. Sometimes betrayal doesn't begin with a kiss. It begins when everyone around you knows the truth and decides you're the only person who doesn't deserve to hear it.